I still remember that day, the day my family clapped louder than ever before. The day my sister stood in the middle of the hall, glowing like she was the sun, and I was just the shadow behind her. It was her engagement party. Everything was perfect. Golden lights, smiling faces, the kind of night that makes you believe life is fair. Except it wasn't. I watched my parents beam with pride as they looked at her. Mom whispered, "That's our golden girl." And Dad nodded. "She deserves everything." I smiled too, because that's what I've been trained to do. Smile, even when it hurt. My husband, Daniel, stood beside me. He squeezed my hand gently, like he could feel the weight behind my smile. He leaned closer and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. But my heart felt like glass, because in that room full of people celebrating her happiness, no one noticed mine had been quietly dying for years. My sister, Claire, turned and waved at me, that same picture-perfect smile she'd worn since childhood. And I waved back. That's what sisters do, right? Support each other, even when one has everything and the other is left pretending she doesn't mind. But that night, something strange happened. When Daniel walked away to get a drink, Claire followed him with her eyes. It wasn't obvious, just a second too long, a look too familiar, and for the first time, something inside me whispered, "There's more to this than you know." Pause, slow music rises. I brushed the thought away. After all, this was her night. The family adored her. The guests adored her, and Daniel, well, he was my husband. He wouldn't do anything to hurt me, right? Or so I thought. Claire and I were only 2 years apart, but it always felt like a lifetime. She was born with sunshine in her voice. Everything she touched seemed to shine a little brighter. Teachers adored her, neighbors adored her, and my parents. They built their world around her smile. I was the quiet one, the listener, the helper, the one who blended in so others could stand out. And for years, that was fine. Until I realized the price of being invisible. Pause, a faint echo of laughter in the background. I remember one evening. We were kids, maybe 10 and 12. I'd spent the whole week working on a school project. Claire, as usual, forgot hers. So I helped her. I stayed up all night fixing her charts, drawing her diagrams. The next morning, she won first prize. And when the teacher praised her, she just smiled. No mention of me. No glance of gratitude. Just applause. For her, Mom hugged her so tight that day. And I stood by the window holding my certificate for participation. It wasn't jealousy, it was something colder. Something like realizing your worth only exists when it helps someone else shine. Years passed, but nothing changed. Claire was always the beautiful one, the confident one, the one who'll go far. And me, I was the responsible sister. The one who made sure the house didn't fall apart when I got married to Daniel. Even then, my parents barely said much. No tears, no emotional speeches. Just a polite congratulations. But when Claire got engaged, they threw her the kind of celebration I never had. The kind where the whole family shows up. Music softens more emotional still. I tried not to hate her, because hate takes too much energy. And somewhere deep down, I still wanted her to love me like a sister should. But that night at her engagement, when I saw the way she looked at Daniel, the way her smile flickered when he entered the room, something inside me woke up. It wasn't anger. It was recognition, because for the first time in years, I saw in her eyes the same thing I used to see in mine, desire. But this time, it wasn't for attention. It was for something that wasn't hers. Pause. Music fades low. Heartbeat sound builds softly, and I didn't know it yet. But that small look was the first spark in a fire that would burn everything we knew. Music swells, then fades out slowly. The days after Claire's engagement felt strange. You know that silence that hums right before a storm? That's what it felt like, quiet but heavy. Daniel was distant. He said work was stressful, but I'd been married to him long enough to know when he was lying. He used to tell me everything, little things, like what he ate for lunch or who annoyed him at work. Now, his words were fewer, his eyes tired. And every time I mentioned Claire, he changed the subject. At first, I didn't think much of it. I told myself he's just tired. But then small things started to bother me. Tiny, ordinary things that didn't feel ordinary anymore. Like how Claire's name popped up on his phone screen one evening. It was late. He said she needed help with something for the engagement party. I smiled, but deep down, something twisted in my chest, because Claire never called me that often. So why was she calling my husband? Pause, soft ticking continues. One afternoon, I decided to visit my parents' house. Claire was there, sitting in the garden, scrolling on her phone. When she saw me, she smiled. That practiced, perfect smile. "You should have told me you were coming," she said. I shrugged. Didn't know I needed an appointment. She laughed, but her eyes, they flickered, like she was guarding something. Then I saw it. A bracelet on her wrist, simple, silver, with a tiny engraved letter D. My husband's name. I froze. It was identical to the one I gave Daniel on our first anniversary. The same design. The same engraving. "Where did you get that?" I asked, pretending to sound casual. "Oh, this," she said, glancing down. It was a gift. I wanted to ask from who, but my throat felt tight, because her answer came too quickly rehearsed. That night when I got home, I asked Daniel about it. He paused before answering, a pause that lasted just 1 second too long. He said, "Oh, maybe she bought it herself. Lots of people have the same designs." I nodded, but I could feel it, the truth hiding behind his calm voice. Music builds slowly emotional strings that night. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation, every laugh, every look they'd shared. And for the first time, I noticed things I had ignored, like how she always complimented him in front of others, or how his eyes followed her a moment too long when she left the room. I didn't have proof yet, just a gut feeling, the kind of feeling that claws at your peace and whispers, "You're about to lose everything." Music fades low. Slow heartbeat sound returns the next day. I decided I wouldn't confront either of them. Not yet. Because if they were hiding something, I wanted to see how far they'd go to keep it secret. And maybe then, I'd finally know who my husband truly was. The truth doesn't always come crashing down all at once. Sometimes it leaks one drop at a time, until suddenly you're drowning in it. For weeks, I played along. I smiled when I needed to. I listened when Claire talked about her perfect fiancé. And every night I came home to a husband who held me a little less tightly. Daniel wasn't cruel. He was careful, too careful. His kisses felt practiced. His excuses sounded soft. It wasn't distance. It was guilt wearing the mask of exhaustion. Soft rain sound in the background one evening. After dinner, he said he had to work late again. So I waited, not because I believed him, but because I needed to know. I followed him. His office wasn't far. But his car didn't stop there. It turned left, then right, then parked in front of a small cafe on the edge of town. And there she was, Claire Dotz, sitting by the window, smiling that same smile that used to make me proud. He walked in. She stood up. They hugged. It wasn't just a friendly hug. It was the kind of hug you give when you've been waiting to touch someone. Music tightens, low cello build. I stayed in the car. My hands shook. My heart felt like it was splitting open. I wanted to run inside, scream, ask why. But I didn't, because in that moment, I realized something far worse. This wasn't new. They'd been doing this for a while. Every secret message, every late night, every strange silence. It all made sense now. My sister, my husband, the two people who were supposed to love me most, had built a secret world without me. Music softens a deep emotional piano tone when I finally went home. The house felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. Every photo on the wall, every memory, every smile felt fake. I sat on the floor and stared at our wedding picture. The same hands that once held me were now holding her. And yet, I didn't cry. Not that night. I just sat in silence, feeling something colder than pain, clarity. I wasn't going to confront them with anger. No, they wanted a secret. Then I'd give them one. Slight pause, rain fades, replaced by steady breathing. I started noticing their patterns. How often they met. What excuses they used. And each time I collected little pieces. Receipts, photos, messages left unlocked by mistake. I didn't want revenge yet. I wanted proof. Because when the truth came out, I wanted the whole world to see what they'd done. Music swells, emotional, heavy strings, and soon, that moment would come. I didn't know when or how. But fate, it seems, had already chosen the perfect stage. Claire's wedding day, music fades out slowly, leaving silence. The day of Claire's wedding arrived like something out of a dream. The sky was painted gold, the air thick with laughter and perfume. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except me. I stood beside Daniel, pretending to belong in that perfect picture. The loyal sister, the supportive wife. But inside me, there was a storm that had been waiting for this day. Claire was radiant, draped in white and confidence. Mom kept saying she's the most beautiful bride I've ever seen. Each time, I smiled a hollow, practiced smile that didn't reach my eyes. Daniel was quiet. He kept adjusting his tie, avoiding my gaze. It was almost poetic, the man who betrayed me now standing beside me, surrounded by the same family who once said I was lucky to have him. Pause, low piano note. Then came the part where the officiant asked if anyone had something to say before the vows were exchanged. The hall fell silent. Everyone's eyes turned toward the stage. And in that silence, Daniel stepped forward at first. I thought he was going to make a toast, maybe a brother-in-law's speech, a few kind words. But then his voice shook, and I knew this wasn't part of the plan. Music fades, soft echo of his voice. Daniel, before we go any further, I need to tell the truth. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Claire froze, her smile stiffening. He continued, his voice trembling but firm. I can't watch her marry another man while pretending nothing happened. I made a mistake. Mom gasped. Someone dropped a glass. He looked straight at me. And in that moment, I swear the entire world stopped breathing. I betrayed my wife, he said, with her sister. Music bursts, single low chord, then silence. The room erupted, gasps, whispers, disbelief. Claire's face drained of color. Her fiancé turned to her in shock, stepping back like she'd burned him. I didn't move. I just stood there, calm, almost peaceful, because I already knew. I'd known for weeks, but hearing him say it in front of everyone felt like justice breathing for the first time. Mom cried out, Claire, tell me he's lying. But she couldn't, because truth doesn't need permission to exist. Claire fell to her knees, tears streaking her makeup. Her fiancé stormed out. Guests whispered, recording everything on their phones, and me. I simply turned to Daniel. He looked shattered, like a man finally crushed by the weight of his own choices. I'm sorry, he whispered. I couldn't live with it anymore. Soft, sorrowful strings swell. I nodded. You shouldn't have. Then I turned to Claire. For years, I'd been compared to her, diminished beside her glow. But now, under the same lights that once made her shine, the truth stripped her bare. And for the first time in my life, my family saw me, pause, faint piano, no anger, no shouting, no revenge speech. Just quiet truth. Because sometimes the loudest justice comes in silence. I walked out of that hall, leaving the chaos behind. My husband's tears, my sister's shame, my family's stunned faces. The night air felt cold, but freeing. And though my heart was broken, I knew one thing. The truth had finally done what I couldn't. It revealed everything. Music fades slow. Emotional outro. The next morning, the world was quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. You'd think after a night like that, there'd be chaos, endless calls, messages, apologies. But there wasn't. It was as if everyone had run out of words. I sat by my window, watching sunlight fall on the garden. The same garden where Claire and I used to play as kids. Back then, it felt like nothing could ever come between us. But now, there was a silence so wide between us. I wasn't sure it could ever be crossed again. Pause, faint wind, my phone buzzed all morning. Calls from Mom, messages from relatives. They all said the same thing, that they were shocked that they didn't know. Some even said they were sorry, but no one had noticed for years. No one ever sees the quiet ones breaking. Mom came over later that day. Her face looked years older, eyes red from crying. She sat beside me and whispered, "I don't know how to face anyone." I looked at her and said, "You don't have to. It wasn't your secret to carry." But I could tell she wasn't crying just for Claire. She was crying because she finally saw what her favoritism had cost. Soft strings swell. I didn't see Daniel again after that day. He packed a bag, left a note, no explanations, just guilt on paper. He said, "I don't expect forgiveness." And he was right. Claire tried to call me once. Just once. Her voice was trembling. She said, "Please, can we talk?" I listened in silence for a few seconds, then hung up. Because some wounds aren't meant to be reopened. Music turns reflective, slow piano. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, life found a rhythm again. I started walking every morning. I went back to work. I began reading again, cooking again, living again, not for anyone else this time. There was still pain. But pain, I realized, is like an echo. It gets softer each time you face it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mom called. She said, "Your father wants you to come over for dinner." Just us? No celebrations, no noise. I hesitated. But then something inside me softened. When I walked into the house that night, I saw my parents standing by the door, waiting. For the first time in years, Dad hugged me first. He said, "I'm sorry we made you feel unseen." And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Belonging. Music swells, gentle, hopeful tone. The house still had memories of Claire. Pictures still hung on the walls. But now they didn't hurt as much. They were just pieces of the past, because no matter how deep the betrayal, time eventually teaches you something. You can't erase what people did to you, but you can choose what stays with you. And I was done carrying their guilt. Soft piano fades, birdsong returns, faintly, narrator quietly. I lost a sister. I lost a husband. But somewhere in that loss, I found myself. Music holds fade to silence. It's strange how life keeps moving. Even after your world has stopped once, months turned into a year. The scandal faded, the whispers died down. People moved on, as they always do. But I didn't move on. I moved forward. There's a difference. Moving on means forgetting. Moving forward means healing. Soft pause, a breeze passes. Sometimes I still think about Claire. Not with anger, but with a quiet sadness. She was my sister before she was my rival. Before she was the person who broke me, and maybe that's what hurts the most. The betrayal didn't come from an enemy. It came from love. But life, I've learned, has a strange way of balancing things. The same pain that once crushed you becomes the same strength that rebuilds you. Music swells. Slightly hopeful strings join. I started writing again, journaling at first. Every night I'd write one small truth about myself. Not about what I'd lost, but what I'd survived. And soon the pages stopped feeling heavy. They started feeling alive. One night I wrote something that changed me. Maybe forgiveness isn't for them. It's for me, so I can finally stop bleeding from wounds they don't even remember causing. And that became my truth. Gentle piano continues. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes, not because I miss him, but because it reminds me of who I used to be. A woman who believed love was enough. A woman who learned that love without honesty is just a beautiful lie. I'm not bitter anymore. Just wiser, softer, quieter. And when people ask me about that night, the night my husband revealed it all, I don't tell them about the pain. I tell them about the peace that came after. Because sometimes losing everything is how you finally find yourself. Music swells, strings and piano blend. Mom once told me that life doesn't give closure. You create it. And she was right, so I created mine. By forgiving what I could, accepting what I couldn't, and letting time take care of the rest. Music softens. The sound of waves rises slightly if I could speak to my younger self, the one who smiled through every ache. I'd tell her this: you don't have to compete to be loved. You don't have to stay quiet to be seen. And you don't have to break to prove you're strong. Because in the end, life isn't about who gets the applause. It's about who learns to stand again when the room falls silent. Music builds to a soft, emotional climax, then fades to gentle piano narrator softly. My family once loved my sister's moment. But when my husband revealed it all, the truth gave me something they never could. Freedom, long pause, only music remains, slowly fading out.